Back now. Back.
In the engine room of...
Interruption. Mitch just walked in. Mitch is the new guy. Insert photo of Mitch.
Yes.
So, bit of a preachy one. I was on Facebook last night, because I got nothing else better to do in my life. Because I got tagged in a post. Jordan's in the window. It's a busy, serious workshop here.
Yes.
I got tagged in a post on Facebook last night about a product and a service. I can't say their name because we know they'll get litigious. We'll call it Terrible Clean. That's got to stand up in court, right? Anyway, and I wanted to run through how literally squirrel piss won't do anything for your car. So we start at the beginning. All R8s are what we call GDI or DI injection engines. That means that the injector is direct into the combustion chamber. It's direct into the engine. So in them olden days, when we used port injection or carburetors, the fuel was introduced into the airflow in the engine before the inlet valves. It's why we call it port injection, and obviously carburetors are run manifold anyway. What that meant was the back of the valve and the inlet port was always washed with a fuel and air mixture. So when you had a closed loop oil system, it constantly washed it away. The reason DI injections have got a bit of a bad rep for carbon buildup is because of emissions. We recirculate the crankcase breathers into the inlet. So when the engine's on a high vacuum load or high load, so there's high vacuum in a manifold, we draw the oil vapor out of the crankcase through the intake system and into the engine to be combusted. So we reburn it. Now, where this sort of comes in is the back of the valves and the inlet ports can have that oil vapor land on them. Now normally this wouldn't be too big of a problem, but again, because of emissions, we get something called internal EGR. That's where the valve timing allows exhaust gases, because of the overlap on the valves, allows exhaust gases up the inlet tract. Now we do this so we can reburn some of the exhaust gases. So the same way that on a diesel you've got an EGR valve. So that means then you get soot out of combustion land on that oily substance that's landed on the back of your valves and on the back of you and on your inlet ports. So if it was a port injection, that'd get washed away. Because it's direct injection and the inlet tract never sees any fuel, you get carbon buildup. Now on early V8 R8s, it's horrible. Like we can lose 100 horsepower. On V10s, it's not so bad. Still get it, but it's not so bad. And then on later V10s, it's kind of less again. And a lot of that is to do with cam timing optimization and also software optimization. On Gen 2s, it doesn't happen. Got a Gen 2 in at the minute on a ramp, having a supercharger. It's 4 years old, done 28,000 miles, inlet tract clean because we've got port and DI. So we do carbon cleaning. We do proper carbon cleaning by taking the inlet manifold off and cleaning it with walnut shell. So we close the valve, seal everything up, close the valves, use a vacuum and what looks like a sandblaster with walnut shell, and we clean it and we suck it out at the same time, and then that gets rid of all the carbon. Put the inlet manifold back on, jobs are good then. So where this company claim they can get a result is by carbon cleaning your engine. Well, I've just explained how they can't do anything on a DI engine before the inlet valves. The reason I don't like it being used anyway is because, I'll show you in a minute, is because it's apparently using a cleaner to clean your injectors from gum and all that crap. Well, if you've ever looked inside of your fuel tank, you never find any gum. So I don't know where this varnish and gum is coming from. But the big thing they overlook, and we do a lot of it when we do carbon cleaning and we do a lot of it when we have running problems, is injectors get a lot of particulate come through filters and filtration systems and fuel systems that end up getting smashed into the pintle of the injector. So if a fuel filter filtered out everything, you'd never get any fuel through it, because you can get particles, hard particles, smaller than the fuel molecules that come through, which is why fuel filters block up. And it doesn't matter how good a fuel station you go to, or how clean the fuel going in is, there's always reason debris gets in the bottom of your tank. So for example, you take your fuel cap off, it's raining, you put the fuel nozzle in, the fuel nozzle's open anyway, you can get all that muck out of your fuel sort of receptacle in that area, you can get anything that's fallen off a nozzle, you can get debris landing out of the air, out of the atmosphere, that ends up in the bottom of your tank. The sock should protect the pump, doesn't always, and then the filter should protect it, doesn't always. There's always a micron level towards a filtration, same as an air filter. So what ends up happening on the pin or on the needle of the injector is you get build-up, right? So the reason this is important is if you've got a as new injector tester, which is what we will test anytime we twin turbo a car or anytime we do a big upgrade, we'll take the injectors out, we'll put them in an injector tester, we'll flow test them, leak test them, we'll clean them, which is where we put them in a sonic bath, and then we activate the injector and it runs. 9 times out of 10, when we test them again, the injectors will be all over the place. And we have to throw some away to match them. The reason that is because we essentially wash some of the build-up on the needle. Now what's underneath then is, instead of on a brand new injector, exactly like a valve seat in the engine, you've got a clean seat and a clean needle. What you've done by removing the build-up is expose the fact that the seat and the needle now look like this, right? So this magic cleaner you've run through your injectors, that is basically a massively high solvent value, higher than fuel, cleans away everything sat in a pintle. Now what they can't test is how that's affected all 8 or all 10 injectors, because your closed loop fuel control is only done on a collector. Sorry, we're going off again. So the reason we take them out and we test them is we test them individually and we compare them. Anything more than sort of 3-4% out across each injector goes in the bin, and then we put a new one in. Because if you've got, say you've got a closed loop control, or you've got a lambda reading of lambda 1 and your target is 1, you could have one injector doing lambda 0.95, you could have another one doing like 1.11 with 2. So then when you start introducing more power, your combustion over an average is right, but individual cylinders are all over the place. And this is why these aftermarket fuel additives, or these systems that plug in line with your fuel systems and they run this stuff through to clean all this whatever out, can make the car run worse. We certainly get injectors leaking after we've cleaned them. Then whatever is washed out, or this high solvent value, anything it does wash out, where does it go? Straight on the face of your 800 cell cat. So if you think, we see cars that have catalyst problems when they've been running rich for a long period of time. And the reason they get cat problems is, 1, the fuel ultimately degrades the efficiency of the cat. But also, a rich running car is a sooty car. And carbon particulates block the cat, so then you get lack of power. So you've just got to be careful how this amazing website talk is not necessarily good. I mean, I have my opinion on it. I think it's hokum, don't bother. I understand not everybody can afford to have a proper carbon clean done, but I don't think you're adding any value by going down the route of plugging some 2 tins of magic potion into your fuel system and running your car on a raised idle for 20 minutes. Because if it was that good, I tell you now, every manufacturer on the planet would be doing it for a service item. There's a reason Volkswagen, BMW, Audi, all right, take the Volkswagen group, so that's Audi, Seat, Skoda. Then you look at BMW, Mercedes, they all sell walnut blasting equipment to carbon clean their engines. Nobody sells this magic potion in bottles that goes in magic machines that plugs into injectors. It's just not. It's not a thing. So happy to chat to anyone about it, but I had to. I don't. It's apparently this chemical atomizes with the carbon buildup on your engine to create carbon dioxide. Well, there's carbon dioxide in your exhaust anyway, and why? If it was that easy, fuel companies would just put that additive in the fuel to have zero carbon buildup in your engines. To have zero carbon, it doesn't work. Fossil fuels are carbon based. We as human beings are carbon based. So you're telling me now that if I pour this chemical on my arm, all the carbon atoms in my body just evaporate to CO2 out of my... It's like...
And for my next trick...
Mate, it's my number one soapbox rant. Don't do it. For a number of reasons. One is anything it does wash out of the car, because it can only be a super high solvent content to wash anything away. Anything it does wash out is thrown on the face of your cat. And when an R8 V8 or an R8 V10 cat is thousands, and then thousands just change because you've got to take engine out, why would you take the risk? And two, people don't realise that it's hard enough for your engine management to control individual cylinder fueling trims anyway. And if you then go and take into account that how often we have to change injectors because of their variants when we test them, when you don't know what that product has done to your injectors, how can you then say your engine's any better? Like I said, you could have one running 0.95, you could have one running 1.2, 1.3 lambda. The average is going to tell you it's fine, because that's all a lambda probe can do, is look at the average across all 4 or all 5 cylinders, depending on whether you're a V8 or a V10. So, bottom line, don't do it.
You heard it here first?
Yeah, and I would never tell anyone they have to have a carbon clean. A bum dyno is a very powerful tool, so unless you've got a running problem, I wouldn't do it. Yes, when we put cars on our dyno, before and after carbon cleans, we get gains. And we do a lot of carbon cleans for people, but I would never sit there and say you need it. You would normally need spark plugs, air filters and fuel filters way before you need a carbon clean. On a V8, spend your money on a carbon clean before a remap. On a V10, it's not too big of a problem. So, yeah, don't buy squirrel piss. Merry
stuff.
Christmas.